Time now for The Drive on ESPN Blacksburg, AM 1430, 810, FM 94.1, and live on the web at espnblacksburg.com.
It's The Drive on ESPN Blacksburg, and a good evening to all of you. My name is Paul Van Wagoner. B-Rye still out, recovering. He'll be back hopefully tomorrow. I have to chuckle because every time I call our guests, I get the, why are you calling me? And Jason Stamm, no difference there. Sean LeBar said the same thing yesterday. NASCAR Steve was a little bit confused as to why I was calling them, but hey, you know, I can operate that end of things. I'm just saying. How are you, Stamm?
I'm good, Paul. I mean, you are a jack of all trades, man. It's just
and a master of none.
Brian, the one, being the one to call me.
That's true. That is very true. Okay, so I'm going to ask you this so I don't forget, because I'm trying to get a poll of experts, and you guys are the closest I've got. Who you got tonight in the World Series, real quick, before we get to the important stuff?
I don't know. Personally, I want the Indians to win, but okay. I think the Cubs are going to win because of the momentum they got going right now, especially after last night.
So if you had to bet the house on it, are you taking the Cubs in this game?
I don't know if I would bet the house, but I would say by a slight margin, I would bet on the Cubs.
All right. I'm doing.
But who do I want? My heart wants the Indians. I personally want the Indians, but I think the Cubs are going to win.
And why is that? May I ask, just out of curiosity?
I'm a Cincinnati Reds fan, Paul.
Okay.
So, they're not like the St. Louis Cardinals. There's not like a hatred there like the Cardinals, but same division. Just not any friendliness with the Cubs,
I got
as far
you.
as I'm concerned.
I can respect that. I totally can respect that. Talking a little college football here today with Jason, of course, recruiting, always a big thing. Any breaking news, any big news? I know that I can't think of his name right now for the life of me. The 5-star defensive back out of the 757. He cut it down to 5 officially. Is that right?
Yes, Devin Hunter is officially at 5 schools. Really, absolutely no shock there. It's kind of the 5 that have really been in it from the get-go. Mm-hmm. Virginia Tech, Florida, North Carolina, Alabama, and Auburn. So, like I've said for a while, it's still going to come down to Florida and Virginia Tech. Carolina is a distant third.
Okay.
But it's pretty much going to come down to those 2 schools right now.
And on the Florida end of things, I think we've talked about this before. It's that Torian Gray connection, right?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, Torian was the one to recruit him, at Virginia Tech, of course, and their relationship goes back as long as Virginia Tech started recruiting him. So, 4 years at this point. I mean, I think Devin was probably a freshman when Virginia Tech reached out and started recruiting him. I guess formally offered him as a sophomore, but it's definitely nothing new between Devin Hunter and Coach Gray.
We talk all the time on the basketball side about the biggest need, and that's a big right now. If you had to put a biggest need on the football side, maybe we do both offensively and defensively. Where do the Hokies really need to concentrate? Maybe not necessarily player, but position or area on the field.
That's a good question. I would say offensive line on the offensive side of the ball.
Okay.
They seem to be able to get skill guys, and they've missed out on a few I think they'd like to have, obviously, and that happens every year.
Sure.
But the position to me that they really have to finish very well in is offensive line. And they don't have a ton of room on the line. Mekhi Becton is by far still the top target.
Mm-hmm.
You might see another offer go out there, but it's not going to be a very big class at offensive line. And so that's partly why they have to make it a really good one. And on the defensive side of the ball, I would say up front with defensive tackle is probably the most important right now. You're losing 2 seniors after this year, and Nigel Williams and Woody Barron.
Mm-hmm.
You've got a good group behind them. You've got Ricky Walker, Tim Settle, Steve Sobchak. You've got a lot of guys that can fit right in, but you got to keep it going. You got to have some guys to fill in that'll kind of follow in line behind those 2 or 3 that I named over the next couple of years. And on that side of the ball, Zach Gill is probably the top target right now. Looking good, I would say, between Virginia Tech and North Carolina. He is visiting UNC officially this weekend. So will obviously go a long way into, kind of how this finishes up here. I think he's looking at graduating early, so he needs to make a decision here pretty soon. Looking at getting him, there's a chance he could visit next weekend for Georgia Tech, but it's more likely going to happen that UVA weekend, Thanksgiving weekend.
Okay, so I got to ask with Zach Gill, 6'4.5", 284, runs a 5.57 40. I'm getting all this information off the VT Zone just so everybody knows. I don't have this on the top of my head. Stamm can probably do this off the top of his head. I can't. But he's out of Wake Forest, North Carolina. How does Wake Forest swing and miss at this kid?
Well, Wake Forest is right outside of Raleigh.
Okay.
So he's actually Wake Forest High School.
Okay.
He's right in NC State's backyard.
Okay.
But, it's a little, that whole area, the Triangle area, Raleigh, Durham, Raleigh, they're all right there close to each other.
Right.
So NC State was in it for a little bit, but that's partly why I think UNC is in it there. He's not going to go too far from home. We've known that from the very beginning. He looked a few other places, but it's pretty much that's a big reason why it is down to Virginia Tech and North Carolina. I mean, there's a few others that are hanging in there. NC State still has a shot, but it's looking like probably Carolina or Virginia Tech.
Now, you mentioned defensive tackle, and one of the guys that's up pretty high on the list on the VT Zone is Elijah Contiff, defensive tackle out of Hampton High School, out of Hampton, Virginia. What are the chances of the Hokies landing this young man?
Yeah, he's an in-state kid. He's over from Hampton, so I think there's a shot there. But Zach Gill by far is the top target. So if something happens with Gill, then I think they move a little higher on Conliffe. But Gill is the guy that they want. I mean, that's the one that Charlie Wiles offered him a couple of years ago. I mean, back when when I'm blanking on his name, Bryce. Thompson was there. I'm blanking on Bryce Love. I'm sorry, Bryce Love.
Okay.
So back when Bryce Love was there a couple of years ago, and Bryce Love was top 100 prospect. So it's been a couple of years in the making now. I mean, this is a guy that Charlie Wiles has devoted a lot of time with. They have got him up here. He was up here a few weeks ago on an unofficial visit. But they need to get him up here on an official visit, and they hope to close the deal on that visit. He hasn't set a date, so it could happen. I don't think it's going to happen this weekend, obviously, with UNC, although it could because he hasn't set a date. But It's looking like he's going to visit Tech either, again, like I said, if not next weekend for Georgia Tech, it'll be the UNC or the UVA game on Thanksgiving weekend.
Now, with the offensive line, and I'm going to ask you just kind of a general question here. When teams are recruiting offensive linemen, are they looking for specific positions, or are they just looking for the biggest, strongest, fastest dudes, and they'll make them into guards, make them into tackles, make them into centers? How do most teams try to recruit when they're looking at O-linemen?
As far as Virginia Tech is concerned, of course, Vance Weiss now makes the fourth offensive line coach in 5 years.
Right.
So there's been a big difference in some of these guys. To me, that was 4 or 5 years ago. That was probably the biggest area, and I think a lot of Virginia Tech fans would agree with me. The biggest position or biggest area on the team that they had a really big deficiency with. I mean, it was pretty noticeable, it seemed like. Got a little bit better when they had Jeff Grimes, but Jeff Grimes was one of those guys, he wanted more athletic guys.
Right.
And if you looked, a lot of the ones he recruited were smaller offensive linemen. They just weren't big guys. Stacey Searles kind of got a little bit more towards big guys. He wanted guys about 300 pounds. And Vance Weiss, I think he wants guys, obviously, they can move, they can run block, but they can, play, and they're good in pass protection. I mean, this isn't a running offense. So this is if you're looking at offensive linemen that are only running, wing tees or they're running a lot of option. I mean, I don't think that kind of guy would work in Virginia Tech. You like a guy who's probably between about 280, 300 pounds. I don't think they necessarily want any massive guards like, 330 or 325 that we've seen some of these guys. But, closer to 300 pounds, But again, that's not a make or break. I think Lucita Smith, I know they recruited him as a tight end. I'll be shocked if he doesn't move back in on the offensive line. I think we talked about that when he committed back in June. But, he's a little smaller. He's only about 260, 265. So I think he's got to put on some more weight to fit in with what they want him to do. But, they want a guy who, again, he's athletic, but can also is big, athletic, but can also move.
Right. Well, and Smith, it's funny because at 255, he's considered small for an offensive lineman, but you guys actually have him listed as an offensive tackle, so pretty committed to that. He's not playing tight end, at least not in the Justin Fuente offense, right?
Well, I mean, you look at the role he's had for his high school team. He hasn't really been out catching passes as a tight end. He's been mostly a blocker. I think he's been over as an eligible receiver a few times. But in almost every situation, it was the block. He has not had a lot of passing. So, again, he's wanted the chance to play at tight end. And Virginia Tech, even going back to Frank Beamer's staff, they did the same thing. If they say they're going to give you a shot, they're going to give you a shot. It may be only a couple days in fall camp or, if they get here in the spring, a spring practice, but they're going to give you a shot. Yeah. So you have some time to prove, hey, you can play there, but I'll be really surprised if he doesn't move in on the offensive line. I know they've got Aiden Brown, who's definitely a true guard, who's going to play there, but Lucita Smith, I think, is probably looking more like a right tackle at this point.
Okay. And on the defensive line, where are the Hokies at with Taiwan Garba? I know had committed, decommitted, got him in their top 4. I know you and I had talked before that it's kind of still Virginia Tech's race to win, but where are the Hokies at with Taiwan right now?
Yeah, Virginia Tech still is the de facto favorite there, I think, by pretty good margin. So, he's still open to some other schools. I think, Pittsburgh still is probably the biggest contender right now. Florida, Georgia have also reached out to him. But, he's one of those guys that it's hard for me to see him being that far away from home. I think, obviously he's not that far from Pittsburgh, but he just fits in so well with Virginia Tech, it seems like. And I think he just kind of wanted to, open things up and make sure he didn't make a mistake. But they have really stayed on him diligently throughout the entire time. Sure. Even when he decommitted, they said, hey, that's fine. We're just going to recruit you harder. Yeah. Didn't take it personally or anything, and they have. So I think that's going to make a huge difference with him. And, he visited for Miami, was here, I guess, almost 2 weeks ago. Right. And now at this point, it's kind of waiting to see what he wants to do. But I think I'll be very surprised if he doesn't commit back to Virginia Tech. And that doesn't happen that often where you commit somewhere, you decommit, and commit back. But in this case, a lot of signs are pointing back to Virginia Tech.
Sure. Jason Stamm is with Scouts.com. You can find all of their stuff at the VT Zone. Lots of great information there. What kind of deals you got going on right now for people that subscribe?
Yeah, well, hopefully I don't get cut off this time like last week, Paul. But still got Sports Illustrated, so
buy a cell phone
subscribe
that works.
Annually to the VTZone.com and Scout. Of course, they get you access throughout the Scout network. You get a 1-year subscription to Sports Illustrated included with your subscription to the VT Zone. So between that and every day you get 10% off of any tickets you order, whether that's Cirque du Soleil or a football game. 10% off of the fan shop of merchandise and gear. A lot of it really ends up paying for itself very, very quickly.
And last chance, do you want to change? You got the Cubs right now as your pick. Do you want to make a change or no?
No. Again, I'm hoping, I'm pulling for the Indians.
Okay.
But the momentum, especially after last night, it's just hard to see the Cubs right now. Now, we'll see once they get going, but I think the Cubs have a lot of momentum, and that's really favoring them right now.
Check out all of the stuff that Jason has to offer and his staff. They're some of the best in the business when it comes to recruiting at the VT Zone. Lots of great stuff, Virginia Tech related, both football and basketball. Jason, as always, man, thank you so much for doing this. Look forward to chatting with you next week.
Well, I appreciate it. I'll look forward to talking with Brian when he gets back.
Yeah, whatever. All right. Take care, man. Have a good one.
All right, thanks, Paul.
Bye. There you go. Jason Stamm, appreciate his time. Yeah, seriously, though, if you want information about Hokie recruiting, about either basketball, football, either side of the football, offense, defense, they've got you covered at the VT Zone.